Constantinople, 1887. Zara Whitley stared at her wedding gown, spread across the bed like a fallen cloud. The Ottoman silks felt foreign beneath her fingertips, as foreign as the marriage she would enter tomorrow. Outside her window, the Bosphorus glittered under moonlight, the waters connecting Europe to Asia just as she would soon connect two empires through matrimony. It is an honor, her father had insisted when the arrangement was announced. A British diplomat's daughter married to Count Ferdinand, nephew to the Habsburg Emperor. This union secures ties between Austria-Hungary and our interests in the Ottoman realm. An honor. A duty. A prison constructed of diplomatic necessity. Zara pressed her forehead against the cool glass of her window. Her thoughts drifted as they always did these days, to him. To copper-flecked hazel eyes that had followed her through the Sultan's garden 3 months ago. To conversations that began as diplomatic courtesy but blossomed into something dangerous and wonderful. Conrad Fielding. The American envoy with revolutionary ideas and a smile that made her question everything. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Your final fitting, miss." Her lady's maid entered with the dressmaker, a local Greek woman with pins tucked into her headscarf. Zara nodded, allowing herself to be draped in ivory silk and pearls while her mind wandered back to the garden, to Conrad's voice as he had spoken of freedom and choice. "The corset must be tighter," the dressmaker muttered. "The Count expects Austrian standards of presentation." The constriction around Zara's rib seemed a perfect metaphor for what awaited her. As they cinched her waist further, she closed her eyes and remembered instead how Conrad had quoted Walt Whitman to her beneath the Ottoman magnolias, his voice low and intense, the untold want, by life and land ne'er granted, now voyager, sail thou forth to seek and find. The Pera Palace Hotel hummed with diplomatic intrigue. Conrad Fielding adjusted his bow tie, uncomfortable in formal attire but aware of its necessity. The American delegation occupied a modest position in the grand ballroom where European powers celebrated the engagement of Count Ferdinand to Miss Whitley. "Fielding," Ambassador Thompson clapped his shoulder, "remember why we're here. Trade agreements, not trouble." "Of course, sir." Conrad's position was precarious enough. The son of a Boston merchant who had worked his way into diplomatic service through sheer determination, he lacked the pedigree of his European counterparts. His appointment to Constantinople had been controversial, a young man of 34 with progressive ideas representing American interests in the delicate Ottoman balance of power. He watched as Zara entered on her father's arm. Her golden hair was swept up in the latest European fashion, pearls at her throat. Their eyes met briefly across the room, and the slight tremble in her composed smile told him everything. "She looks like a painting," murmured Baroness Kovacs beside him. "The Count has chosen well." "She wasn't given a choice," Conrad replied before he could stop himself. The Baroness raised an eyebrow. "Choice? What a peculiarly American notion, Mr. Fielding. Arrangements between great families have preserved our empires for centuries." Conrad sipped his champagne to avoid responding. He had already said too much. His encounters with Zara had begun innocently, diplomatic courtesy extended to a fellow Westerner in the Sultan's court. But their conversations had quickly revealed a kindred spirit, a mind as sharp and curious as any he'd encountered. The orchestra struck up a waltz. Count Ferdinand, a man 20 years Zara's senior with an impeccable military bearing and cold eyes, led his fiancée to the center of the ballroom. Conrad watched Zara's performance, for performance it was, each step and smile precisely calculated. "You're staring, Fielding." Ambassador Thompson had returned. "The girl is spoken for. More importantly, she represents a British-Austrian alliance that our government would prefer not to complicate." "I understand international relations, sir." "Do you? Then understand this, your position here exists at the pleasure of men who expect absolute discretion." As the dance ended, Conrad excused himself to the terrace. The night air carried the scent of the sea mixed with hookah smoke from a nearby cafe. Behind him, the doors opened and closed. "You promised you wouldn't look at me that way tonight." Zara stood in the shadows, her gloved hands gripping the stone balustrade. "I apologize," Conrad said. "I've never been skilled at hiding my thoughts." And I've never been allowed to have thoughts worth hiding. She moved closer, careful to maintain proper distance. Tomorrow I become a Habsburg countess. My future is secured. Is it what you want? Her laugh was soft and bitter. Want? My father arranged my marriage before I could walk. The only decision I made was postponing it until I was 20. Zara, no. She raised her hand. Don't say my name that way. Don't make this harder. A silence fell between them, filled with unspoken possibilities. I received orders this morning, Conrad finally said. After your wedding, I'm being reassigned to Vienna. Her eyes widened. Vienna. Apparently, my understanding of Habsburg interests requires deepening. His smile didn't reach his eyes. I'll be liaison to the very court you're entering. Zara's composure slipped momentarily. That's dangerous, he finished. For both of us. The terrace doors opened again, releasing a burst of music and laughter. Count Ferdinand stood framed in the light, his posture rigid. My dear, he called to Zara. Your father is looking for you. Zara transformed instantly, her vulnerability vanishing behind a diplomatic smile. Of course, Ferdinand. Mr. Fielding was just sharing news of his posting to Vienna. Indeed. The Count's eyes narrowed slightly. How fortunate. We shall see you at court, then. As Zara took her fiancé's arm, she glanced back once at Conrad, a look that contained a universe of what could not be said. The wedding ceremony in Hagia Sophia blended Orthodox tradition with Catholic and Anglican elements, a diplomatic achievement in itself. Beneath the ancient dome where emperors had once been crowned, Zara spoke vows in 3 languages, promising herself to a man she respected but did not love. Her father beamed with pride. Her mother dabbed at tears with an embroidered handkerchief. Diplomats and aristocrats filled the pews, a tapestry of uniforms and finery representing a dozen nations. Conrad sat at the back, his face carefully neutral. When the priest pronounced them husband and wife, Count Ferdinand kissed her hand rather than her lips, the first indication of their marriage's true nature. At the reception in Dolmabar's palace, Zara performed her role flawlessly. She conversed in French with Russian diplomats, in German with Austrian nobles, in English with British officers. Only once did her mask slip, when she caught sight of Conrad speaking with a young Ottoman official near the Bosphorus windows. A headache, my dear. Count Ferdinand appeared at her side, offering a glass of water. Just momentary, thank you. Zara took the glass. The excitement, perhaps. You conducted yourself admirably. His voice was not unkind, merely assessing. The Archduke himself commented on your poise. Zara had quickly learned that her husband valued appearances above all. Ferdinand was not cruel or vulgar, indeed, he was scrupulously correct in all things. His passions were reserved for his military career and his collection of astronomical instruments. For his bride, he offered respect and position. We leave for Vienna tomorrow, he reminded her. My duties require immediate attention. Of course. Zara nodded. I've completed my packing. Excellent. The American delegation approaches. Shall we? Conrad bowed formally as Ambassador Thompson offered congratulations. If Zara's hand trembled slightly when Conrad kissed it, only he noticed. We understand you'll be joining us in Vienna, Mr. Fielding, Ferdinand said smoothly. Yes, Count. My government believes stronger ties with Austria-Hungary will benefit both our nations. Indeed. Though Americans seem to have unusual ideas about international relations. Conrad's smile remained diplomatic. We're a young country, still learning from established powers. Youth can be impetuous, Ferdinand replied. Experience teaches patience and proper order. The conversation continued in this vein, pleasantries layered with subtle warnings. When the Americans moved on, Ferdinand turned to Zara. Fielding seems intelligent, if somewhat idealistic. A common American trait. I wouldn't know, Zara replied carefully. We've had limited interaction. Ferdinand studied her face. I chose you not only for your connections, my dear, but for your discretion. I trust it will extend to all your diplomatic relationships. His emphasis on the last word made its meaning clear. Zara met his gaze steadily. I understand my responsibilities, Ferdinand. To you and to your family's position. Something almost like approval flickered in his eyes. Then we shall succeed admirably together. Later, as the celebration continued, Zara found a moment alone in the palace's blue hall. The ceramic tiles surrounding her depicted gardens that would never wither, perfect, preserved, eternal. Countess. She didn't turn at Conrad's voice. We shouldn't speak alone. I know. He remained at a proper distance. I came to give you this. He placed a small package on the divan beside her. A wedding gift. A book. Whitman's Leaves of Grass. For your journey. Zara finally turned to him. Conrad, I've marked a passage. His eyes held hers. About paths not taken. Footsteps approached. Conrad bowed and withdrew before they could be discovered. Zara quickly tucked the book into the folds of her gown as her lady's maid appeared. Countess, your husband is preparing to depart. Zara nodded, her fingers still feeling the outline of the book against her ribs, where it pressed like a second heart. Vienna in autumn was a city of fading grandeur. Golden leaves drifted onto marble monuments while military bands played in the Habsburg courtyards, echoing the empire's past glories while present troubles simmered beneath the surface. For 3 months, Countess Zara Ferdinand moved through Habsburg society like a perfectly wound automaton. She mastered court protocol, charmed the emperor's advisors, and transformed the count's austere townhouse into a respected diplomatic salon. If she seemed reserved, it was attributed to British temperament rather than personal unhappiness. Her marriage settled into predictable patterns. Ferdinand treated her with detached courtesy, requesting her presence at official functions but otherwise pursuing his separate interests. Their private interactions were formal, their physical relationship perfunctory and rare. You've adapted well, Ferdinand told her one evening as they prepared for a state dinner. The Archduchess Sophie has specifically mentioned your contributions. I'm pleased to hear it. Zara fastened her sapphire necklace, a Habsburg heirloom symbolizing her acceptance into the family. Ferdinand adjusted his medals before the mirror. There's talk of posting me to the Balkans next year. A delicate situation requiring diplomatic finesse. The Serbian question. He looked mildly surprised at her awareness. Among others. Your presence would be beneficial. Of course. Zara hesitated, then added, though I've heard the American envoy has some influence with the more progressive elements there. Fielding. Ferdinand's expression hardened slightly. Yes, he's made himself rather visible since arriving in Vienna. Too visible, some would say. In truth, Conrad had maintained strict propriety since their arrivals in Vienna. Their interactions had been limited to formal diplomatic settings, always with others present. If their eyes occasionally met across crowded rooms, if her heart quickened when he entered a salon, no one could prove any impropriety. But the book he'd given her, that was different. Each night, alone in her private chamber, Zara would read Whitman's words by lamplight, I am the poet of the woman the same as the man, and I say it is as great to be a woman as to be a man, and I say there is nothing greater than the mother of men. These words became her secret rebellion, a reminder that another world existed beyond imperial protocol and dynastic expectations. At the state dinner that evening, Conrad was seated far from her, but Zara felt his presence acutely. The American delegation had gained prominence in recent months, as tensions between European powers created opportunities for neutral parties. Your countryman seems to be rising in influence, Baroness Kovacs commented, following Zara's brief glance toward Conrad. Though his methods are unconventional. In what way? Zara asked, maintaining a casual tone. He meets with journalists, labor representatives, even women's suffrage advocates. The Baroness lowered her voice. The sort of people the Emperor would prefer to ignore. Zara sipped her wine to hide her reaction. Americans have different diplomatic traditions. Indeed. Though one wonders about his true mission here. The Baroness studied Zara carefully. Some say he developed particular interests in Constantinople. Before Zara could respond, a commotion erupted at the far end of the table. A military attaché had received an urgent message. He whispered something to the Archduke, whose face darkened. Ferdinand leaned toward them. There's been an incident at the Serbian border. Several Austrian soldiers killed. The dinner concluded abruptly. As diplomats and military officers gathered in tense clusters, Zara found herself momentarily alone near a marble column. Conrad appeared beside her, his face grave. "This will escalate quickly," he said quietly. "My sources say the Emperor's advisors have been waiting for a pretext." Ferdinand mentioned the Balkans. "Your husband will likely be sent there, yes?" Conrad's eyes met hers directly for the first time in months. "With war approaching, positions will harden. Communications may be monitored." "What are you saying?" "If you ever need to reach me without official channels, there's a bookshop on Herrengasse. Marcus Bauer, the owner, can be trusted." Before she could respond, Ferdinand approached. Conrad bowed and moved away smoothly. "We're returning home immediately," Ferdinand told her. "I've been summoned to a special council." That night, as Ferdinand attended emergency meetings, Zara stood at her bedroom window watching military couriers crisscross the cobblestone streets below. War was coming, she could feel it in the urgent rhythms of the city, in the heightened guards at embassies, in her husband's suddenly expanded importance. She removed Whitman's book from its hiding place behind a loose panel in her wardrobe. As she turned the pages, a small slip of paper fell out, one she hadn't noticed before. In Conrad's handwriting were the words, "We were together. I forget the rest." Zara pressed the paper to her lips before burning it in her candle flame. Spring 1888 brought war rumors and political maneuvering. Count Ferdinand was frequently absent, traveling between Vienna and the increasingly militarized border regions. His letters to Zara were formal reports rather than personal communications, detailing his diplomatic triumphs and requesting that she maintain their social obligations in his absence. Vienna itself transformed subtly, more uniforms in the streets, more patriotic music in the parks, more censorship in the newspapers. The American embassy maintained its neutrality but faced increasing suspicion from Habsburg authorities. Zara continued her duties as countess, hosting the right people, saying the right things. But she also began observing more carefully, noting which military officers spoke most eagerly of conflict, which diplomats seemed concerned rather than enthusiastic, which journalists were suddenly absent from social functions. When Conrad appeared at her salon one afternoon, protocol required that she greet him as she would any diplomat. They exchanged pleasantries about the weather, about recent opera performances, about nothing of consequence. Yet when he handed her his calling card, she felt a slight thickness to the paper. Later, alone, she discovered a second card hidden behind the first. Tomorrow. Bookshop. Noon. The following day, Zara told her lady's maid she was visiting the cathedral to pray for her husband's safe return. Instead, she directed her carriage to Herrengasse, where she entered a small bookshop with windows clouded by decades of dust. The elderly proprietor nodded without speaking and gestured toward a back room lined with leather-bound volumes. Conrad stood beside a globe, turning it slowly. "Thank you for coming," he said when they were alone. "I shouldn't be here." Zara remained near the doorway. "Probably not. But I have information your husband should know." She studied his face. "Is that truly why you arranged this meeting?" "No." His honesty was always his most disarming quality. "But the information is real. There's a faction within the military pushing for immediate action against Serbia. They plan to present the emperor with false evidence of broader conspiracy. And you know this how? We have sources. People who believe this war would be catastrophic for all involved." Zara moved deeper into the room, her voice low. "Why tell me? Why not use official channels? Because certain communications are being intercepted. Because your husband, despite his hawkish reputation, is actually one of the moderating voices. And because, Conrad stopped. Because? Because I needed to see you. The admission seemed torn from him. To know you're well. Zara felt the dangerous warmth she'd fought to suppress for months. I'm performing my role, as required. Is that enough? It must be. Conrad stepped closer. And if there were another possibility? There isn't. She kept her voice firm despite her racing heart. I made vows. To a man who married you for diplomatic advantage. That doesn't make them less binding. Zara looked away. Ferdinand treats me with respect. He doesn't deserve betrayal. Conrad touched her hand briefly, the first contact they'd had in months. I'm not asking for betrayal. I'm asking if you're happy. The question, so simple, so devastating, hung between them. Before she could answer, the bookshop owner appeared in the doorway. A Habsburg guard in the street, he warned. Routine patrol, but best not linger. Conrad quickly handed Zara a folded paper. The details about the Serbian situation. For your husband only. She tucked it into her glove. I should go separately. Yes. He hesitated. Zara, don't. She shook her head. Whatever you want to say, please don't say it. She left through a side entrance, emerging into an alley where her carriage waited. As she settled into the seat, she realized she hadn't answered his question. Was she happy? The word seemed to belong to another language entirely, one she had stopped speaking the day she said I do beneath the ancient dome of Hagia Sophia. Ferdinand returned to Vienna the following week, thinner and more somber than when he'd left. He received the information about the Serbian conspirators with grim attention. This confirms my suspicions, he said, studying the document in his private study. General Halas has been pushing for military intervention regardless of diplomatic consequences. The source is reliable, Zara said carefully. Ferdinand glanced up sharply. American. She held his gaze. Does it matter if the information prevents unnecessary bloodshed? After a long moment, he sighed. You've changed since our marriage, Zara. Become more politically aware. I've had an excellent teacher in you, she replied diplomatically. HM. He folded the paper and locked it in his desk. There will be a crucial vote in the Emperor's Council tomorrow. This may help the moderate faction. That night, as they prepared for bed in their separate rooms, Ferdinand paused at her doorway, an unusual occurrence. You've never asked why I chose you, he said abruptly. Zara set down her hairbrush. I assumed it was for the connection to my father's diplomatic position. Partly. He entered the room but remained standing formally. But there were other candidates with similar connections. I chose you because when we were introduced in London 2 years ago, you asked me about the Hungarian constitutional crisis rather than court gossip. Zara remembered that brief meeting, how she'd been scolded afterward by her mother for being too intellectual. You wanted a mind, not just a social hostess. Yes. Ferdinand's expression softened slightly. My first wife gave me an heir before her death. I didn't need another. I needed a partner who understood the complexities of our world. It was the most personal conversation they'd had since their marriage. Zara felt a surprising rush of sympathy for this rigid, duty-bound man. I've tried to fulfill that role. You have. He hesitated, then added, but I wonder if I've provided what you need in return. The unexpected insight startled her. Ferdinand, I'm not blind, Zara. Nor am I romantic. Our arrangement is political, but that doesn't mean I'm unaware of your sacrifices. She couldn't find words to respond. The American, Fielding, Ferdinand continued, his voice carefully neutral. His career seems unusually focused on wherever you happen to be stationed. Zara's heart stopped. Nothing improper has occurred. I believe you. Ferdinand studied her face. But propriety and feeling are different matters. I've honored our marriage, she insisted. Yes. Because you are honorable. He moved toward the door. Tomorrow I'll argue against military action that could engulf Europe in war. If I succeed, I'll be appointed to a permanent diplomatic commission working for stability in the Balkans. That's what you've wanted. It is. Ferdinand paused. The position would require extensive travel between Vienna and various capitals. You would need to remain here, maintaining our social and political connections. The implication hung in the air between them. I understand, Zara said quietly. Ferdinand nodded once. We all make choices within the constraints of our positions. Good night, my dear. After he left, Zara sat motionless at her vanity. Had her husband just offered her a form of freedom within their marriage? Or had she misunderstood his meaning? The complexity of their relationship, built on mutual respect rather than love, suddenly seemed both more restrictive and more liberating than she had realized. The Emperor's Council voted against immediate military action, a diplomatic victory credited largely to Count Ferdinand's intervention. The following day, his appointment to the Balkan Commission was announced in the official court circular. That evening, Vienna's elite gathered at the Opera House for a performance of Mozart's The Marriage of Figaro, a deliberate diplomatic choice highlighting Austrian cultural heritage. Zara, dressed in Habsburg blue with her sapphire necklace, represented the Count alone while he attended to final arrangements before his departure. During the intermission, she stood on the grand staircase exchanging pleasantries with a Russian duchess when Conrad appeared at the periphery of her vision. He bowed to both women, maintaining perfect diplomatic form. Countess, may I convey my congratulations on your husband's appointment? His voice for moderation comes at a crucial time. Thank you, Mr. Fielding. I'll pass your regards to the Count. The Duchess was called away by another guest, leaving them momentarily isolated in the crowded space. He used the information, Conrad said quietly. Yes. It may have prevented immediate escalation. Then some good has come from he hesitated, connection. Zara glanced around to ensure they weren't observed. Ferdinand leaves for Belgrade tomorrow. He'll be traveling extensively in the coming months. Conrad's expression revealed nothing, but his eyes held a question. He knows, she whispered. Not everything, but enough. He spoke to me about arrangements. What kind of arrangements? The kind that acknowledge reality while preserving appearances. Zara looked directly at him. He's not an unkind man, Conrad. Just a pragmatic one. Before he could respond, the bell chimed for the audience to return to their seats. Zara moved toward the theater doors, but Conrad caught her wrist briefly. The bookshop. Tomorrow at noon. She neither agreed nor refused, simply continued into the theater where Mozart's characters navigated their own complex marriage of convenience and forbidden desire. The next morning, Zara stood on the platform at Vienna's Südbahnhof as Ferdinand's train prepared to depart. The station bustled with military officers and diplomats, many bound for the same commission meetings. I've left instructions with the staff, Ferdinand told her. And a list of people who should be invited to the house during my absence. I'll maintain your connections, as always. He studied her face. And your own. Zara met his gaze steadily. With discretion. Ferdinand nodded once. I've always valued your intelligence, Zara. It's why I chose you, and why I trust you to understand the delicate balance we must maintain. The marriage contract says forever, she said softly, echoing the formal language of their wedding vows. And so it shall be, in the eyes of society and empire. Ferdinand took her gloved hand and kissed it formally. What happens in the private chambers of our hearts is perhaps more complicated. It was the closest he would ever come to acknowledging their arrangement. As the train whistle blew, he boarded without looking back. Zara watched until the train disappeared, carrying her husband toward the Balkans and whatever future their unusual marriage would allow. At noon, she entered the bookshop on Herrengasse. The elderly owner nodded in recognition and gestured toward the back room. Conrad waited, his face betraying both hope and uncertainty. You came, he said simply. Yes. Zara remained by the door. But I need you to understand something first. Conrad waited. I won't break my marriage vows or publicly dishonor Ferdinand. He's offered me a certain freedom within specific boundaries. I can accept that, or I can reject it entirely. There is no third option. What are you saying? I'm saying that if there's to be anything between us, it must exist in shadows. It must never threaten his position or the diplomatic work he's doing. Zara took a deep breath. Can you accept those terms? Complete discretion, limited moments, no promises. Conrad moved toward her slowly. I've loved you since Constantinople, Zara. I'll take whatever you can give. Even knowing it can never be more. Even then. She closed the distance between them, placing her hand against his cheek. My heart whispers your name, Conrad. It has since we first met. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, the beginning of something both forbidden and somehow sanctioned, existing in the complicated space between duty and desire. Outside, Vienna continued its imperial rhythms. In government offices, men debated war and peace. In palaces, emperors maintained their illusions of permanence. But in a dusty bookshop on Herrengasse, Zara and Conrad created their own world within the constraints of the old one, a world where love found its way through the narrow passages left by empire, obligation, and honor. When Zara returned to her Habsburg townhouse that afternoon, she went directly to her private chamber. She opened her writing desk and began a letter to Ferdinand in Belgrade, a proper, detailed account of the diplomatic function she had attended in his absence. At the end, she added a personal note, I am maintaining all appropriate connections as we discussed. The house continues in perfect order, awaiting your return. It was both truth and code, an acknowledgement of the complex arrangement they had silently negotiated. Her marriage contract indeed said forever, but her heart had found its own careful freedom in the space between duty and dawn.